tricked me.
I'm done. I cannot. I love stuff.
All right.
She cracks me up.
Take it away, Ashley.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about chapters 1 and 2 of the book that we have been reading. That is by John C. Maxwell. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. I'm going to go over the first chapter with you guys and break it down, and then Hannah's going to come in and go over chapter 2. And then as we move throughout the book club, we'll just kind of touch base with everybody, kind of seeing like where everybody's sitting at, so we're not moving too fast. But we do also want to, like, you know, hold us all accountable to getting the book done in a timely manner, right? So the first chapter, it is called, let me go up here real quick, hold on. When you're losing, everything hurts. This one, I'm just going to say something real quick. I loved this first chapter already. Like, it's definitely grabbing me into the book, just because, I mean, I feel like all of us kind of deal with the idea of we have failed at something, or we're not going at the expectations that we're trying to get to. So we're not at where we're wanting to be at. So it's a loss. It's losing. We're not winning, right? Instead of us like trying to rethink things in a different perspective. And I feel like it already starts to make you rethink how your thoughts go as you're reading this first chapter. So what's really cool is he goes into explaining about this one time he went through this airport, and his friend had given backstory. His friend had given him a gun. He put it right in his briefcase, didn't think too much about it. Conversation goes on. The guy puts like, because he's still holding it, he's like, oh, you don't know how to put a bullet in there? Let me put it in there for you. So all of these things that he just wasn't thinking about the outcome of it, he was just living and doing, ended up being a huge learning experience from him, because then one day he brought that suitcase, run into the airport like he needed to, and he's going through the airport with that suitcase that has a gun in it, and he totally forgot. I mean, it was harmless, but I mean, there wasn't like he was trying to go and shoot up the place. He really was just trying to receive a gift, and then he forgot about it. And then he's dealing with his normal day-to-day life, traveling, and all of a sudden he's in this predicament of getting arrested. And this is a real story from John Maxwell. If you know anything about him, like, he's very, very inspiring, but I love the fact that he's also very real. Like, the stuff that he says is the thing that he has gone through, you know, and I feel like we can kind of connect with that. When you get down a little bit further in the chapter, he then goes into why losing hurts so much, and he breaks it down into different categories. Let me see how many that was. I believe it was like 5 or so. Let me double check 1 second. Yes, 5 different sections. So how he breaks them down would be: 1, losses cause us to be emotionally stuck. Number 2, losses cause us to be mentally defected. 3, losses create a gap between I should and I did. And I'll go over different types of little mistake trap or little traps that people fall into. He broke that into like 11 different ones. And then number 4, the first loss often isn't the biggest loss. And then the last one, number 5, losses never leave us the same. So when he breaks each of those down, the first one was losses cause us to be emotionally stuck. When he was talking about that, something that stuck out to me was, and this is just me personally, is I get in my own head. Like, the minute that I'm like, oh, okay, I can't succeed the way that I want to in that, I'm just gonna stop now before I get to a point where I put so much effort and time into this and I'm just like overwhelmed by it. But something he was kind of saying in here, let me see if I can find the quote real quick. Hold on. Where is it? Because he was talking about how he an experience that he was dealing with. So let me hold on. Let me break down his experience. So he says, recently I had experienced being emotionally stuck after I made a foolish mistake. A wonderful friend invited me to stay a few days at his beautiful river house in Idaho. so that I could get away and begin writing this book. The setting is inspiring and perfect for thinking and writing. The view overlooks a beautiful body of water with tree over hills in the background. It was spectacular. Let me skip that because he just like goes into detail of how beautiful it is. My son-in-law, Steve, our friend, Mark, were with me because they were heading to Canada. As we got into the car to head to Spokane to head up to the airport, Steve asked, "Do we all have our passports?" My heart sank. I had forgotten mine. Now this was no simple matter of turning around and going back to get it. I was out west. My passport was in Florida, more than 2,000 miles away. In 6 hours, I was supposed to be speaking in Canada. I started to feel sick. What was I supposed to do? How could an experienced international traveler like myself make such a foolish error? I felt like such an idiot. So the minute that he started to feel that he didn't succeed, all of these negative things started rushing to him. He started having self-doubt. He started having questioning things like calling himself an idiot, right? Those are all negative things that we tell ourselves when things don't go the way that we expected it to go, right? So that's kind of what I took about from that first lesson. The second one was losses cause us to be mentally defected. Real quick, one thing that he said here, the quality that distinguishes a successful person from an unsuccessful person is one who is otherwise like him in the capacity to manage disappointment and loss. So basically, like, how we react in turn is really how things continue to happen. So if you think about all the things that you felt like defeated by in the past, and if you're like doing all this negative self-talk, you're literally doing the same cycle. Like, if you were to think, and this is just me thinking out loud, breaking that cycle and starting to say, oh, okay, no, like, actually, this is just a learning lesson. What can I learn from this moment? What can I take away from it? What am I grateful for from it, right? I always say, like, gratitude will snap you right back out of like any of those like defeated moments or like self-negative talks. But anyways, the third one was losses create gap between I should and I did. I love this one because he breaks it down into 11 traps that people fall into, and some of them myself, I fell into them. So let me see if you guys fall into them as well. If you do, type which one really set out in your mind when I'm reading these, and I'd like to see just kind of where everybody's at, so we can share. That was the word. I'm like, what was the word I was looking for? Okay, the first one was the mistake gap. This one is, I'm afraid of doing something wrong because losses hold us back. So if you're thinking constantly, I don't want to do that wrong, I don't want to have a mistake, I don't want to look stupid, it's because you're afraid of having a mistake, and that will follow you right into a trap. The fatigue trap. I'm too tired, I didn't eat, I didn't get enough sleep, I need a nap. Those things are just traps. They're the negative self-talks that we tell ourselves. The comparison trap, that someone else is better qualified than you are. They're doing it better than I am. I mean, something that John Maxwell even said in Monations was, if you aren't in the business, Monations is a convention that Monet has, and they had speakers there, and John Maxwell was one of them. And he said that you can't compare yourself to other people, because if you're doing the do, or if you're wanting to do what they did, that's what it is. If you're wanting to do what they did, you have to do what they do. So what they're doing all day and what they're constantly doing, you have to do that. Yeah, do the did. There we go. I'm like, man, that's a mouthful. I don't know how he said that on stage like that. Tongue twister. Yeah, so the comparison gap, the timing gap, this isn't the right time for me, I'll start later when the time is right. Right now isn't the time because I'm not prepared. I mean, if we really think about it, we're never prepared for stuff. Things just happen. And I think about this all the time. When I'm not prepared for something and it does happen to me, that situation prepares me, right, for the next time that issue might arise, or if it arises with somebody else. But what would you do if you can feel limitless in the aspect of just going out, trying all these things. And then when that big thing does happen, you're like, actually, I was prepared for this, you know, instead of preparing yourself in that moment. That's what creates so much anxiety. Anyways, the timing gap, the inspiration trap. I don't feel like doing it right now, which motivation and inspiration, totally different things. Or actually, they're kind of hand in hand, depending on how you really look at it. I use people as inspiration, not as motivation, because if I was motivated by other people, I would never do it. I have to motivate my own self. And being motivated, you don't actually get that. Motivation is something that you can create within yourself. But if you're not doing it, you can't create that motivation because you're not, your brain is like, no, you're not doing it. So anyways, that's another story. The rationalization trap, maybe it's really not it's really not that important right now. I can actually put that off. I have something else that I need to do. The perfection trap, that there's a best way to do something. You're waiting for perfection to start something. I mean, let's be real. There's no perfect time to start anything besides just doing it. The expectation trap, I thought it would be easy, but it isn't. The fairness trap, I shouldn't have to be the one to do this. Why me? Okay, I'm not gonna lie. If we're being real with one another, that was definitely me. I still play that. It's kind of like a slight victimizing kind of thing, a victim thing. I don't know. I'm trying to get out of that because I realize, like, from my life, I'm looking at all of the important people that have raised me. They kind of have a little underlying, and I need to like stop that because nothing's fair. Let's be real. Nothing is fair. You are dealt the cards that you are dealt because those are the cards you're dealt with, period. So play them. You know, you got to have a poker face for a little bit, have a poker face for a little bit, period. Okay. Anyways, that one just hit hard for me because out of reading all of these, to me, and I'm not even done, the ones that have felt for me would be the comparison trap, comparing to other people, and the fairness, why me? And then the last two, the public opinion, if I fail, what will other people think of me? What if I don't show up the same way? What will people think of me? What if I don't do this the same way? What will people think of me? What if I do this differently? What would people think of me? The self-image trap, if I fail at this, it means I'm a failure. Because you don't, honestly, the self-image trap, I also feel that as well, because for me, it's not really much of like, if I fail at this, I'm a failure. It sucks to say, but I kind of go into that already. Like, I'm already going to fail, I'm a failure. But because of the amazing people that I have been supporting me and just me working on my mindset, I'm trying to, like, the minute I literally hear that in my head, I'm like, no, because you haven't even started yet. How can you do that? Like, don't do that to yourself. So big thing is we put a lot of these traps on ourselves, and that's what also causes the losses to be a bigger gap between the bridge of getting over it and dealing with it. Or not getting over it, sorry, that's literally the format of getting over the bridge. I meant to say dealing with it and being stuck at where you're at, right? And then the next part that he goes into, breaking down the 5 why losses hurt so much. Number 4 was the first loss often isn't the biggest. So when we experience a loss, we have a choice. If we immediately respond to it the right way, the loss becomes smaller to us. However, if we respond in the wrong way, or if we fail to respond at all, the loss becomes greater. And it often leads to other losses because it's a literal domino effect. As the what's this word? Subsequent losses come at us, they seem to be bigger and bigger, crashing over us like waves in a violent storm. As the number of losses go up, our confidence goes down. So in turn, you need to focus on the not the losses, and that will help your and how you respond to things when you do have a loss, and turning, like, that turnover time. Basically, if you were to take that turnover, if you know, like, if something really catastrophic happens and it takes you a year, 6 months to get over it, right? you got to focus on, why is it taking me this long? How can I help my own self to get over this so that I can get that self-confidence back, so that I can get that that energy that you truly need to like do the things that you want to do, right? Number 5 was, losses never leave us the same. Something that I took away from this one was, every time we have a loss, we have 2 options of going about this. You have either the option of taking that loss and just sitting with it and living with it, and that's it. Or you can take that loss and learn from it, do something better with it. And that in turn is going to help your confidence grow, because you're showing yourself like, yeah, I took this moment of me being down, but I'm using it as a stepping stool to get myself to the position that I want to get to, you know? So I really, really liked chapter 1, just because of the way that it broke it down. And I like in general how the book reads. Did I miss anything from that chapter? Let me know. Hannah, if not, go ahead and take away on to chapter number 2.
All right. Good job, Ashley. I agree. I love reading this book. I love how he gives all these stories and all the examples in it too. And if you guys don't know, John Maxwell is a huge leader in, I guess, building leaders. He's been training leaders for decades. That's 10 years, right? And he's really well known. So the fact that our company partners with him, that he was in person at our conference, he does other training. If you're in the top like 1% of the company, you get trained with him. I believe it's in person. It could have been over the computer because of the, COVID and everything. But anyways, he's awesome. So we're blessed, and I'm super excited to read this book. Chapter 2 is called Humility, the Spirit of Learning. And this whole chapter goes into talking about how humility is the big difference between people who are able to bounce back from their losses. They learn from their losses, they become better from them. But then there's the other type of person who, when they fail, they fall and they don't get back up again, or it takes them a really long time to get back up. This type of person, after they experience something negative, you start to see the downward spiral. No matter how much you want to help them, you can't, because those type of people, they need to, reading this book is an awesome first start. We've all been that type of person in one part of our lives or another. So I don't want to make it seem like a negative thing at all, but it's important to take into consideration, I guess, what I'm going to say in this whole chapter, because I'm going to get more into all of this. But he says that what's the difference between these 2 kinds of people? He says that it's not timing, it's not social status, it's not the degree of the adversity or anything outside of their control. He believes that the difference is on the inside, that it's the spirit of the individual. Those who profit from adversity possess a spirit of humility, and therefore are more inclined to make the necessary changes needed to learn from their mistakes, their failures, and their losses. They stand in stark contrast to prideful people who are unwilling to allow adversity to be their teacher. This is like everything to me, because this is my big goal, is making sure that I am this type of person. And I feel like as I am able to learn from my challenges, I'll get stronger, and like Ashley said, build my confidence like throughout my life. It's a big long-term thing. And as I was also reading this, I was also thinking about people that I know who really fall into the category of being so prideful that they don't have the humility to be able to admit when they have made mistakes, when they have a character flaw, any of those things, like literally my father. But I'll go more into these examples. But the little like header under this is called Pride Goes Before a Fall. So everyone experiences adversity. Some people are made humble by it. Some people are made hard by it. Pride is concerned about who is right. Humility is concerned about what's right. Pride causes people to justify themselves even when they know that they're wrong. And that's just the start. Take a look at the negative impact that pride could have on a person. So If you are so prideful that you are not able to admit when you need to grow or change or when you've made a mistake, your pride is in the way of your humility. You might be someone who blames. Instead of taking responsibility, prideful people blame others. They believe that someone else is at fault when things are not working for them. Denial. Instead of being objective and realistic, they don't face reality. A prideful leader of a business will choose to ignore what's obvious to everyone else. Do you guys know someone like that? So everyone else is saying that the family is dysfunctional, or this person will rationalize his or her behaviors. Maybe closed-mindedness. Instead of being open-minded and receptive, prideful people are defending new ideas. So you're not open to learning. They say this is the way we've always done it. Jenna, you were talking to me about people at your work who literally have said that that's the way that we've done it. They're all old school. They have their own, like, you know, a lot of us have probably worked like that, or a lot of us have family members like that. And it's frustrating because innovation and improvement are so important. I'm going to get more into it, but that's literally how our world changes and grows. If it wasn't for improvement and innovation, we wouldn't have freaking electricity. It's like, it's so important. You have to be flexible and open-minded. It's a big one, in my opinion. These people are flexible. They say we do it my way or I'm out. They might be insecure. Prideful people inflate themselves and deflate others because they're insecure. They take credit for successes and give other people the blame. When insecure people are in positions of leadership, instead of fostering team spirit, they create a low morale and drive away their best people. Isolation and touch with themselves, their customers. Pride makes people think it's all about them when it's all really about others. So, do any of these descriptions apply to you? It's okay. He even says that in his formative years of leadership, he did not possess humility needed to fill him with the spirit of learning. He said in the beginning, he was the opposite. He was prideful. He was competitive. He always wanted to win. He was a poor sport. But he wasn't even aware of it. And I'm sure that you know people like this. Maybe you are even like this, or you recognize this in your old self. He said, it's hard to be humble when you're as great as me. And then eventually his eyes were opened. It took a long time for him to implement this change. He said arrogant people don't get humbled quickly. And it's important at a certain point to make the change. You can stay confident, but you have to make sure that your confidence doesn't get in the way of your ability to learn. And that's really what this is boiling down to, is that humble people possess the spirit for learning. So if you're really trying to learn, if you're really trying to grow, like whatever your goals are, if you're serious about these goals, it's really important to start to make the necessary changes, to not have blame, to not have denial, to not have closed-mindedness, rigidity, insecurity, isolation. Let's see. So he says that these characteristics are often of leaders. I believe they also apply to everyone who does not possess the spirit of learning. Do you tend to believe that you know it all? Do you tend to think that you should be in charge? Honestly, when I was reading these ones to myself, I was kind of like, ooh, like I felt a tinge, whatever, inside of me. Like, I have to admit, even though I'm the one sharing this, that doesn't mean that I think that I'm the perfect leader, because in some of these, I was like, oh, I think it's talking about me. So do you tend to believe you know it all? Yes, a ting works too. Do you tend to think you should be in charge? I do like to be in charge, and I do tend to think that I can do things my way. Do you sometimes believe the rules don't apply to you? Do you believe you shouldn't fail? Do you tend to believe you get things done all by yourself? I don't think that anymore. I don't know if I've ever thought that, but I love working as a team. Do you believe you are better than others with less talent or status? Do you think you are as important as or more important than the organization? So remember, it's not it's the finish line, it's not the start that counts. So if you feel like you might possess some of these qualities still. This isn't the finish line. We're doing this work so that we can start to notice areas where we need to better ourselves or make ourselves, in this case, he's using the word humility. So making ourselves more humble in these areas, being able to admit that is something that we need to improve on, you know. He gives a lot of stories, and I don't think I'm going to get into the stories, but he does talk about, I like that he talks about leaders. I like that he talks about athletes. He gives examples of teams, like how a really great athlete forgot his jersey and he thought that he was going to get to play. And the coach was like, no, like, it doesn't matter that you're our best player. We'll lose the game. Lesson about, you know, doing the little things right, being humble. And I can relate to that. So he goes on to talk about how so he has a checklist or like a numbered list after. So these are the ways that possessing a spirit of learning, having how it can open the door for you to learn and have higher levels of achievement. So number one, it will allow you to possess a true perspective of ourselves and life. If you are living without humility, you don't really see yourself, you don't denial. And if we focus perspective, so by having humility, we can really regain the whole perspective, see the big picture, and realize that although we're not in the picture, we're not the entire picture. He goes on to say there's like little quotes in this book too, which are also nice. I've been kind of skipping over them because like I could talk for an hour about this one chapter. But he says, show me a guy, the guy who is afraid to look bad, and I'll show you a guy that I could beat every time. I love that. I love these quotes about like, I don't know, about when it relates to sports to me, because like I said, I grew up an athlete. So if you're afraid to look bad, you're gonna not win. And this is true. This is true in life. This is true in how you're looking to the outside people, then you're not gonna truly like just let go and perform the best that you can. Humility fosters an agenda of seeing things as they really are, of learning, where pride fosters closed-mindedness and always seeks to justify itself. Humility fosters open to improve. Humility puts things in perspective, and if we let it, it will help us have a better sense of humor, he says. Number two, humility enables us to learn and grow in the face of loss. When people are humble enough to have a clear and realistic view of themselves, their vision is usually so clear and realistic that when they face their mistakes, their failures, and their other losses, they have the ability to see how they can learn and grow from them. How do humble people learn from mistakes? They pause and they reflect. He strongly believes because you can have all the experiences, but you're not going to learn your true lesson unless you're humble and unless you stop and evaluate the experience. Wise, humble people are not afraid to admit when they were wrong. When they do, it's like they're wiser today than they were yesterday. So instead of changing your perspective, instead of looking at losses as something negative, you're looking at losses as now you're stronger and now you're wiser, you know. Humble people, I already said that one. Mistakes can be our best teacher. If we're willing to admit and learn from them, we gain knowledge and wisdom. We can do so if every time we take time to reflect on them by asking. So these are some questions that I don't know if you're taking notes or writing it down now, but these are questions that you can ask yourself whenever you make a mistake or just come to any moment in your life. What went wrong? When did it go wrong? Where did it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? How did I contribute to it going wrong? What can I learn from this experience? And how will I apply what I've learned in the future? Asking these questions can be a slow and uncomfortable process. You're probably not going to want to answer them, especially if you're action-oriented. Stopping to reflect for someone who's go, go, go is hard, but humility will allow us to learn. Number three, humility allows us to let go of perspective and, let me try that again. Humility allows us to let go of perfection and keep trying. So I loved this part. So he goes on to talk about how all of the best inventions in our world were accidents. Call them accidents, call them mistakes, call them serendipity. If the number of great inventions and discoveries that were accidental. So think about inventors. I talked in the beginning about how if we were afraid to make mistakes, we would stop trying, and then we would not invent all of these amazing things. That things like electricity, things like our computers, our technology, everything was tried and tried over and over and over. Inventors or engineers know that the first time you try something, it's not going to work. I love this, you guys. I say this exact thing to my students. It's so fun when like the two intermix, because I'm a makerspace teacher. I teach them about failure, because when you're building things, it's not going to work the first time. And if it does, you probably could do it better. You know, we're so used to not wanting to make a mistake. We're so used to wanting to be perfect that we're afraid to take that and improve upon it and realize that that's just the first step. Like, the process isn't over. Don't be so hard on yourself. Try again, keep going. Like, life is fun. You can be creative if you're not so hard on yourself, you know? So can I tell you guys about a few? So inventors and discoverers mentioned in this book should teach us a lesson. Intelligence is not to make no mistakes. Intelligence is to see how quickly we can make them good. And I've heard many leaders and say quotes like, whoever makes the first mistake learns the quickest. That people who are very successful start, they go out there, they try, and they're willing to make mistakes, and they actually want to make a mistake first, because they're going to learn faster than the people who are sitting there and afraid to make a move because they're afraid to get it wrong. So Coca-Cola was invented as a mistake. It was originally going to be a medicine to relieve exhaustion, aid nervousness, and soothe headaches. But then they like mixed it with bubbly water, and then Coca-Cola was invented. They don't mention it in this, but it had Coke in it, right? Humility allows us to make the most out of our mistakes. That's number 4. And this continues to go into talking about like inventors. Novelist Mark Twain once asked to name the greatest of all inventors, and he replied, accidents. Sorry, maybe I read that wrong. So he said that his greatest inventions are his accidents, that when he's humble, he can see his mistakes as possibilities and innovations for success. There is a guy named Charles Goodyear who was conducting experiments with rubber. He got the substance from a tree sap, and people had been trying to use tree sap for so many years. Whenever they tried to melt it, it got hot. When they made it hot, it melted. When it got cold, it shattered. They can't figure out how to use this tree sap. And then one day he accidentally dropped some rubber mixed with sulfur into the hot kitchen stove. And the rubber and the sulfur worked together to make like a firm and flexible material. And he invented rubber. Goodyear tires, right? He invented rubber because of a mistake. Let's see. Penicillin was the mistake. Cellophane was a mistake. Microwaves were a mistake. So if you bring the right spirit and mindset into your work, any mistake can be turned into an opportunity. Success and fame don't always come to the most talented people. It comes to the people who can turn adversity into advantage. So really, like, I've given so many examples. Building up your resilience, changing the way that you see mistakes or hard, challenging moments, using humility can really change your life. I feel like this is just such a great like foundation for what we're going to continue doing as we learn. You know what I mean? Like, being able to learn is the first step. And I love this, and I want to talk about it more, because I feel like we can all open up, we can all be a little like vulnerable, talk about the moments where we need the spots where we need to have humility. Like, this gives us such a great checklist that we can talk through. So yeah, I think that if we're humble, I don't know, I said everything I need to say, actually. So yeah, that's chapter 2. I don't know how long I was talking for. Sometimes I feel like I get going. But we'll go on to chapter 3, 4, and 5 next. We'll talk about the foundations of learning. There's a few other great chapters. We have like 12 in this book, so we're about like a fourth of the way through. And yeah, Ashley, thank you. I'm done.
Wow, that was perfect. I love that.
Killed it.
So yeah, if you want, you go
Played
ahead and
it.
stop recording so that way we can chit chat for a little bit.
Slaughtered
And
it.
also, thank you for the compliment.